I'll just make it this thing. You as a co-host, and Lalit as a co-host. So when I mute everyone, please do not mind, because during the meeting I'll keep on everyone muted. Right, sir?
Yes, sir.
So
So are we starting at 7 o'clock?
no. Once we have announced 6:30 means 6:30. What I have kept it extra time because I wanted to do it early, so that half an hour you tell us, or earlier part you tell us what is happening on to the epidemic. Where are we really conquering the battle, or we are in between, or have we reached the peak or not, and all those things. And
Yeah.
after that, you by 7 o'clock, since I earlier I said 7 o'clock, so by 7 o'clock you tell about the 7 to 8 the vaccine and all thing, in all very in a very simplified way.
Okay.
So in that time, I'll keep everyone else muted, and then start the proceedings. I'll take around 5 minutes our regular this thing, which we do it. Uh,
ठीक है.
because I have learned something new to this is first I'll mute everyone, and then you have to unmute yourself, right?
Okay.
So good evening all, and we start our program. And let me welcome Doctor. I'll just uh, you got your presentations ready, Doctor
Yeah,
Raman?
yeah.
Right. So before that, I'll just although you are one of our own people and don't need any introduction, but since today we have got a different audience, so would like to introduce you, and would like just a moment. So that is how Dr. Snehalata ji is here, and I am very happy and welcome Dr. Snehalata Mathur also. So what we do, can you
Thank
see
you.
my screen? Devi ji, can you see our screen?
Yes, sir, it is.
Yeah, yeah. I
Right,
can see your
right,
screen.
right. So this is how we start our normally our program every day, and we welcome Dr. Raman Gangakhedkar. Dr. Raman, we offer you a floral bouquet and a Rajasthani turban for that purpose, and will request Dr. Lalit to kindly introduce Dr. Raman Gangakhedkar, the very light personality of today.
Thank you very much, sir, and a very heartiest welcome to Professor Raman Gangakhedkar. He is a very well-known figure. We keep seeing him on televisions very often these days. And sir, I am audible.
Yes.
Yeah, very much.
Am
Very
I
much.
audible, sir?
Yes.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
audible.
So Dr. Raman Khedkar is basically a national chair, holding a national chair for ICMR New Delhi, and he had been a former head division of epidemiology and communicable diseases ICMR New Delhi and director in charge National AIDS Research Institute Pune. So he has a lot of work to his credit that earned him Padma Shri Award in 2020, and we are all very proud of that achievement of his. As a head of ECD, he managed recent outbreaks of Nipah, Zika, and COVID-19, and he has been working in the field of HIV disease for over 3 decades now, and is an expert in HIV medicine and associated infectious diseases, epidemiology, and public health. He was one of the key players in advocacy since 1989 and has been involved in policy making at national level on antiretroviral therapy, management of opportunistic infections, prevention of mother-to-child transmission of HIV and STI management, in addition to other key population-specific policies. He has been a member of many prestigious international committees on different and has been on the committees on different facets of HIV disease, including those contributed by ACTG, WHO, UNICEF, and United Nations AIDS. He has a large number of publications to his credit, to be precise, more than 200, and has published 5 books on HIV infection. So he's a very well-known figure in the field of epidemiology and infectious diseases. And we are really honored to have you, sir, today in the evening, and welcome you on behalf of the forum.
Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. And before we start our program, we just want to have a small prayer for that. I don't know whether to... Well, we also present you a virtual felicitation and this thing. Dr. Lalit, please present him.
Yes. So, sir, we wish to present you with a token of appreciation, and I hope you would like this. Kindly accept our token of appreciation. Though it's a virtual, and we would always love to see you in person whenever we get an opportunity to do that. Kindly accept this token of appreciation. From
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now you please start sharing of your this thing.
Oh, I should share?
Yes, yes, yes. And I request all people to please keep muted.
We can mute ourselves, Dinesh.
Yes, please.
Just 1 second. My
Sure.
screen is frozen. I don't know why.
No issue. Absolutely no issue. Welcome, Dr. Niranjan Nagpur. Dr. Nagpur is a... Yes, Dr. Narendra. Yes, yes, now it can be seen.
No, but I don't know why this is getting frozen.
Doesn't matter, you can do one thing. Very simple. Yeah, now, yes, now we can see.
Yeah, today what I'm going to do is keep the presentation very simple, as much as in simpler language.
Yes,
We can discuss variety of other issues that people have questions on, that I would answer at the end of the presentation. Oh, this is something very funny has happened.
what has happened?
Okay.
Right.
Okay, it's moving. Now, if you actually look at where we are today, we have more than 1 crore infections, whereas globally the number has gone beyond 9 crore as of now. If you look at the rest of the world, rest of the world tends to have either second wave or third wave in the place, especially in the developed countries. But the red line tends to show our Indian curve. And what does it show? There is a decline. The decline that you see is in the first wave itself. And the reason why we continue to have only the first wave was we had a long lockdown, and the lockdown has postponed initiation of this outbreak in a serious mode by close to about 4.5 months time. And naturally, our first wave is ending now when the entire world is reeling on in the second or third wave. Now, why do we need to think of a vaccine against COVID-19? One must remember that within a short span of a year, over 9 crore individuals in the world have acquired COVID-19. India has reported 1 crore, first wave is declining. You are hearing about newer variants that are emerging, especially the one from UK and South Africa. And then at this point in time, if you look at the numbers, the second wave that is seen or third wave that is seen in rest of the world, you suddenly realize that in USA, the number of people who are getting detected with this particular infection is over 3 lakh per day. If you look at England, which is very small country in terms of population, you find the number is exceeding 60,000 per day. Now, if that is occurring, it is also getting reflected in the hospital beds. The availability of hospital beds has become an issue not only in US but in UK as well. Now, if this is the issue, we need to be worried. We need to think in terms of preventing the emergence of second wave through every possible measure. One of the measure is we have to continue following COVID appropriate behavior. And at the same time, the scientists who have been successful in developing vaccine against COVID in 12 months time, which was a dramatic thing to be observed, something which we never imagined to begin with. And since that has happened, you add one more weapon in your armamentarium by using vaccine in addition to practice of COVID appropriate behavior. So the second wave or the third wave could probably never arise in India. And that's something which is the essential feature. And this will reduce the number of people who are dying due to COVID-19 and also reduce the transmission if used with COVID appropriate behavior. So we need a vaccine. But there is something which we have to remember. Why do we need a vaccine desperately? The reason is the COVID appropriate behaviors, they are effective as well as easy to follow. But at the same time, COVID fatigue is also setting in. A large proportion of people, now they're no longer keen to follow these COVID appropriate behaviors. Now this would entail that you might have emergence of second wave, which we don't want at any cost, because we have seen how sharp the infection increases, how hospital beds tend to become inadequate in handling this particular medical emergency. In other developed world, naturally this would be a worst case scenario for us because our population size is very high and number of beds are as much limited in India. Now, why are we worried? Did we, both of us, Dr. Mathur, when he talked about it, whether we should give a talk for general population as well? Now, one of the things which we have to realize is all these vaccine trial approvals have been given in a fast track mode. So you tend to hear different kinds of stories or news about the toxicities that tend to come. People tend to question whether I should take the vaccine, and that has created what we call as vaccine hesitancy. So there are two things which could have had happened. One is vaccine eagerness. If the panic levels are high, people would like to take the vaccine at the earliest, so it leads to vaccine eagerness. But if the fears tend to mount in a stronger way, you find people would go for vaccine hesitancy and refuse to do that. One of the early surveys, which was done by Ipsos and published in Wall Street Journal, they showed that if we look at the reasons why people tend to get worried about these vaccines and which create hesitancy, people are worried about side effects. People are worried why and how the vaccine trials have been so fast. Some people believe that it may not be effective. Some of us will believe I'm not likely to get COVID, which is very simple to actually answer. All of us are vulnerable to acquire COVID if our exposure levels are significant. So that should not be an issue. But people tend to think that if there is a decline in infection as we are seeing in India, I am unlikely to get this because number of people who are infected continues to remain small at this juncture. Why should I worry? But all of us need to remember that when the second wave will start, the numbers multiply in a geometric manner, and therefore the risk also magnifies in geometric manner. From one case, it could become 2 cases, 4 cases, and 8 cases, and grow just like that. And the risk will continue to increase as the numbers would increase if second wave starts. There are some people who are against vaccines right since beginning. They believe natural infections are good. So why should I go for vaccination? Now these issues we try to understand a little bit at during this particular talk, and thereafter after the discussions. Now, which vaccines have been approved so far? If you look at USA, you have Pfizer and Moderna. These are the two that have been approved. In UK, you have Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca vaccine. AstraZeneca vaccine, incidentally, is the one which has got approval in India also. You have in China and Saudi Arabia a Chinese vaccine, which is Sinopharm, which is similar to the Covaxin. There they are using similar entire virus particle, inactivated one. You have Russian vaccine, which is closer to in Russia. They use Sputnik V, the trial of which is also has commenced in India very recently. Dr. Reddy's lab is conducting that particular trial. Sputnik V vaccine is more closer to AstraZeneca vaccine, which we will try and understand what are the differences between these different vaccines subsequently. In India, we have already given approval as for emergency usage or emergency restricted usage as it is described to Covishield, that is AstraZeneca vaccine, and Covaxin, which is Bharat Biotech vaccine. Now, firstly, we try to understand what are vaccines. No, we need to understand certain basic features. One is our immune system tends to respond to assaults of various organisms by producing proteins against that organism, and how these organisms proteins are considered important. These are weapons which the organism has, and we try to produce antibodies. Our immune system produces antibodies to neutralize those weapons that they have, and
Your,
that's how we take
your
care.
screen is not viewing. There's something else which is being viewed.
Oh,
Your screen.
Somebody else is sharing the screen along with him, sir.
Right. Let me see.
Galaxy 12. Galaxy 12.
I'll do one thing. This will stop screen sharing. Do you want to continue? You please do it once again.
oh, I should do it once again. Okay.
Because somebody has. I don't.
Galaxy J2. Galaxy J2 is sharing along with him, sir.
Yes, yes.
COVID-19. How are vaccines generally administered? You tend to give it by injections. You may give it orally, as you see in polio. You may give it through nose, like you had one influenza vaccine, and it is possible that even Bharat Biotech currently has submitted an application to conduct a nasal vaccine that they have developed against COVID-19 for its own vaccine trials of phase 1 and phase 2. So even nasal vaccine is a possibility that cannot be ruled out in COVID-19. Now, why do people worry about this vaccine development? Our memories tend to come back very quickly. There are multiple viral diseases that have occurred in human beings. Those are which are very serious, and there our efforts to produce vaccine against them took an inordinately long period of time. You look at Ebola; it was more than 15 years that a successful vaccine could be developed. You look at HIV, for over 33 years of work, but no vaccine has yet been developed. You look at SARS-CoV-1, MERS, no, they have 17 years and 4 years of work and no vaccine that is available. Then people think, how is it that for SARS-CoV-2, within 10 months' time, people could produce this particular vaccine, and that causes little bit of anxiety to most of us when we think about it. Now, how could they develop it so quickly? No, this was possible because people started conducting research on newer vaccine development platforms to begin with for HIV, because HIV was a difficult virus to produce vaccine against it, because HIV keeps on changing very rapidly. Now, if I was to give you a comparison for COVID-19, the rate of mutations is almost 2 mutations per month, whereas for HIV, it's more than 8 mutations per month. Now, that was a very fast replicating virus. But these vaccines failed, but people continued to have those platforms. And suddenly, the Ebola came up in Congo. Now, when Congo had this Ebola, and there was a fear that it could perhaps spill over to rest of the African countries, people started using the same platform and used Ebola virus sequences and tried to produce a vaccine against it. First, it was monoclonal antibody development as a program which was initially successful, and then subsequently vaccine was also developed by Merck. Now, when these vaccines were developed, no, one thing which became apparent is, since you have a pluripotent vaccine development platform, you could use that for against this particular organism. These platforms were essentially an asset, because these are developed against any emerging and re-emerging infection. So even in future, if there is a new infection that comes in, we will be able to, of this kind that produces pandemic, we will be able to quickly develop vaccine, and would not require the normal time for vaccine development, which used to be close to 2 years. Now, within 2 weeks of reporting, the vaccine was developed
Your voice has gone, Dr. Raman.
of this particular
Ah,
virus.
now it is all right.
One
The
second.
audio is doing the problem.
Yeah, 1 minute. 1 minute.
Okay.
I don't know. 1 second. Huh?
Doesn't matter, doesn't matter. Please take your time. This is a not a
सर ये
very
थोड़ा ना आज कुछ तो भी अजीब ये हो रहा है.
कोई नहीं कोई नहीं.
नहीं ये जूम का मीटिंग कंट्रोल्स वो नहीं आ रहे. Now 1 minute. Huh?
Sure. Don't worry. The topic is very important and the speaker is more important than everything. So, and we are all comfortably sitting Sunday evening. At some places, Sunday morning. In England, Sunday afternoon.
नहीं, मैं बदलने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ, दूसरे डोंगल पे लेता हूँ, तो भी थोड़ा तकलीफ दे रहा है.
Doesn't matter if it is
आज
making.
मेरा स्टिकी क्यों हुआ है? वो बहुत स्टिकी हुआ है स्क्रीन, पता नहीं क्या है.
Doesn't matter. You just One thing you can do it, you can stop sharing, and or shall I stop sharing and then again you can come back?
मैं करता हूँ ना सर.
ठीक है,
मान मैं इतना स्टिकी कभी स्क्रीन ही देखा नहीं हूँ.
कोई नहीं, कोई नहीं, कोई नहीं, doesn't matter. Shall I stop share and then again you can reshare it?
Yeah, I could stop share. 1 minute.
Yes.
Yeah,
Now
now it is better.
again you reshare. We have got many friends from United Kingdom which they have joined. Dr. Satyesh is here. Dr. Snehata Mathur is here. Many senior people I can see. Dr. Niranjan
Need
Nath.
more support.
Yes.
अभी दिखाई दे रहा है?
नहीं नहीं अभी नहीं आया.
नहीं, मैं दिख रहा हूँ क्या?
Oh yes, yes, yes. You are visible.
Still, I don't understand why this has become sticky.
Doesn't matter.
वो कर्सर ही मूव जल्दी नहीं हो रहा है. पता नहीं क्या है.
कोई नहीं, you can stop that once. Reopen it first, and even if you leave the meeting and then now it has been changed. Yes, fine. You can make it on full slideshow.
Yeah. अभी ठीक है?
अभी ठीक है बिल्कुल. Yes.
हाँ.
Right.
So currently there are close to about, I need to modify the slide. Within 2 weeks time, people started working. There are currently about 239 odd vaccine candidates, and only about 67 are in human trials, I said. But what is more interesting is you have still, a large number that is in preclinical development. So we are geared up in such a manner that we have pluripotent platforms. Everybody wants to make a difference, and newer vaccines development got a big boost. And what is also important for us is, since the outbreak was very rapid, people tweaked a little bit on the vaccine trial related issues, how it should be conducted for fast track approvals. And that's how the vaccines came out within a year's time. Now, so far in the world, what we were using is whole inactivated virus. No, it is what was essentially something like polio vaccine, where you were using entire virus. Then there was live attenuated vaccine virus, no, which is like it's not able to replicate inside the body. Then there were certain subunit vaccines, protein subunit vaccines, which would mean that the antigens components are broken up into pieces and they are injected into human beings. And there were also virus-like particles vaccines which were being developed earlier, like ones for HPV, human papilloma virus. But in this particular generation, the approach against COVID-19, people started using the viral vectors, the DNA, the RNA, and antigen presenting cells. Now we come to understand what kind of vaccines are we likely to get in India in the near future. Some of the examples which are very important for us to understand, we need to first understand how does our body produce protein. Now, proteins are generally produced from a DNA. It's a gene sequence. This gene sequence contains vital pieces of information as to how the protein should be produced. Now, how would this information be shared with the cell? It is shared first, but the DNA shares this information with what we call as messenger RNA. Now, he is like more like a postman. Now, he carries that information with him and then delivers it to the cell to produce the protein. That's how normally it happens. So we have different options. Now, one option could be we start from the DNA itself. You follow the entire process from DNA to mRNA and from mRNA to production of protein. Or you could also see that you could provide only mRNA, which has the genes that are encoded for spike protein, and you deliver them so that the spike protein is generated inside the body. And that is how people first used mRNA among the vaccines that have been approved in the world today. Then those vaccines are Pfizer and Moderna. They don't carry DNA material, but what they carry is messenger RNA, which is inside a liposome, some kind of a oily particle, so that it can easily penetrate the cell. And this messenger RNA's information is used to produce spike protein. And then, if you look at these two vaccines, how different are they from AstraZeneca vaccine? AstraZeneca and Sputnik vaccine, both the Russian vaccine also, they use adenovirus. It's a vehicle that you use to deliver these genes encoding spike protein, and the vehicle is an adenovirus. Adenovirus is a common cold infection causing virus that we generally have. And what they have done is they have cut the DNA of the host, the adenovirus, make it non-replicating, and then you add to it the genes which are likely to produce spike protein. So they would have those sequences. And when you give this particular vaccine, the adenovirus will release this particular mRNAs once it gets inside, and then it will produce a spike protein, and spike protein will generate this vaccine. Now, there is a small difference between the mRNA vaccines and AstraZeneca. In AstraZeneca, you play with the DNA of that virus, whereas in Pfizer and Moderna, you are only giving the messenger RNAs which are produced from the DNA. So they start from one step. If it was a two-step procedure, two steps that we have to fly before you produce the protein, you could start from DNA, or you could take an intermediary step of mRNA, the messenger RNA, and that's what Pfizer and Moderna are using. Whereas AstraZeneca and Sputnik, they are using adenovirus as a vehicle to deliver this particular DNA and produce this vaccine. Now, what are the differences between AstraZeneca vaccine and the Sputnik V vaccine? One thing which we must remember, both of them were aware of one issue, that adenovirus can be a common infection. So my body will have antibodies to fight against that particular adenovirus if I provide, and it will not allow the immunization that is actually to be done once it enters into the body. Now, in order to avoid that they don't want that body already had adenovirus infection before. So what they did, AstraZeneca used an adenovirus which has never been introduced in human body. They picked up that adenovirus from chimpanzee stools, so that virus has never been exposed to the body, and body will treat it as a foreign new infection, and then it will act against it. So body will not fight against adenovirus as one which had come before. Whereas what Sputnik has done, they have done one more clever trick. They have used two adenovirus species which are different, which have never entered in the, which are most rare to be entering into human body. Now, what they do is, in the two dosages that you have to give, they first give adenovirus, which is named as adenovirus 26, the name of that virus. Now, first dose is of adenovirus 26, and the next dose, the second dose that they give, is of adenovirus 5. What's an advantage? Both the adenoviruses are unlikely to be reacted to or reacted against by our own body. But additionally, what they have done is, if I give adenovirus 26, then it is likely that my body may produce after, let's say, 3 to 4 weeks time, antibodies against this particular virus. And next time, if I repeat the same dose, it is quite likely that my body will have antibodies which will reduce the take of this immunization. Therefore, they use adenovirus 5, which is different than adenovirus 26, so that it does not affect the final immunization as such. So these are two things which we have to first understand. How, what does Bharat Biotech vaccine contain? It has a whole virus which is inactivated. So it will not only have spike protein, but it will have all the remaining three major proteins which against which the body is likely to respond. So it doesn't have these worries of any kind. How will I deliver? Because these are classical platforms. It's just a inactivated vaccine. These platforms have been used in the past well, and they tend to have almost every component of the virus which would be there against which body can react. Now, how is this vaccine developed? Because you tend to hear a lot about controversies that are arising as to whether we have bypassed certain procedures, or then we tend to worry about safety. So we need to understand the scientists first develop a vaccine in a laboratory setting. Now, once you develop in a laboratory setting, you tend to go for animal studies, which are conducted, and these animal studies are called as preclinical toxicity studies. So you give it to the animals. Now, one best way, as an example, is for COVID-19. People can use hamster, people can use ferrets, people can use monkeys as the animal models in which these studies can be done. Now, this vaccine is administered to the animals to check whether it is safe. Because one worry is, if you provide it to, if you are to even do a trial in human beings, you should be reasonably confident that the product that you are going to give should not kill a human being because of its own side effects. So first you give it to animals. If animals do not develop such a toxicity, then you think in terms of taking to human trials as such. Now, even when you give it to animals, different dosages of vaccines are also tested in animals, and there are different formulae that you can use to calculate then based on the dose that you have injected in an animal to be translated into a possible range of human dosages as such, because human beings are likely to be different than animals as such. Later, the vaccinated animals are infected by the virus. No? Once you infect that animal which has received vaccine with, let's say, SARS-CoV-2, then you would like to see how many of them do not develop the disease. No? How many of them will not develop infection. No? Both are slightly different. Disease is one where symptoms come, organs damage is very much visible. Infection is also some way related to the not only getting infected, but they could control that infection. That kind of approach is also likely to be seen, which you can observe it in the animal studies. Then after that, what happens is you take this particular vaccine into human phases of trial. In phase one, which is generally done in about 50 to 30 volunteers, you test for safety and immunogenicity of this particular vaccine. In phase two, no, what is safety and immunogenicity? Like we talked of in animal trials, no, we said if you provide the vaccine and animals don't die or animals don't develop serious toxicity, you take it into human beings in small number of people, because there you would like to know, if you provide it to the human beings, what kind of toxicity profile? Does it produce similar immune response? No, does it produce antibodies against it? But the number is kept smaller because you would like to know whether this vaccine can be taken to phase 2 trial based on the small numbers data that tends to emerge. In phase 2, you go for safety and immunogenicity little more rigorously. You have more than 100 volunteers which are part of this particular protocol. You could also be looking at safety. You do look at safety and immunogenicity, whether it produces immunogenicity is how powerful is that protein that I'm using or the virus that I'm using, how much of antibody response can it produce? No? If it is good, then I can take forward this particular vaccine. And you could also do dose ranging studies in this. Dose ranging studies, like you heard about Covaxin, you go for a 3 microgram versus 6 microgram as different dose. And then they found that 6 microgram is an appropriate dose that I would like to use in human beings. That was also a phase 2 trial. In phase 3, what you do is you study the ability of the vaccine to protect people from developing severe disease or no infection that can occur at all. No, and at the same time, you study the side effects. And there, the number of people to whom it has to be administered is now very large. It goes to about 30,000 or more than 30,000 participants. It all depends on what is my expected rate, no, which I would like to look at in terms of sample size. So sample size can vary to a large extent. But when it comes to phase, then what happens is if the vaccine passes this test, now we find that there were minor side effects. The efficacy, it's a highly effective vaccine, which you calculate subsequently. You try to find out if you provide the vaccine to 100 people, how many of them will not develop serious side effects, serious severe disease. No, and that proportion is called as efficacy. Efficacy means in a clinical trial setting, if, for example, the data that tends to suggest to you from Pfizer or Moderna, if I say that the efficacy is 90%, it means if I provide the vaccine to 100 people, 90 will be protected and 10 may not be protected, right? Now, when you actually do real-time administration, then in those cases, the settings are not control setting. What do we mean by not control setting? No, in a vaccine trial, the volunteer is always reminded, no, he has to come for the second dose. And supposing he doesn't turn up, the follow-up related activities are suddenly mounted to ensure that he receives the vaccine at the same time, which perhaps he was expected to do now or in that particular window. But when it comes to effectiveness, you find that some of them may turn up. Let's say this was to be taken after 28 days. Some of them may turn up, let's say, after 1 month's time. Somebody comes after 1.5 months' time. And then the efficacy starts, getting disturbed, the figures. So by and large, efficacy protection from efficacy trials, that tends to be higher. If I say there was protection of 90% in vaccine trials, when it comes to effectiveness or real-time administration, that level tends to go down. It may go, let's say, I'm giving an example, it could be 80% instead of 90% when you start providing it to the population. Now, despite the fact that you may do a rigorous phase 3 trial, you may have a follow-up, which could be, let's say, 1.5 years as a standard follow-up, or 2 years of a standard follow-up. But within 2 years, not all side effects would ever be seen. You are still worried that even if I find that the side effects are less, I have described different side effects, I would like to know more about its long-term safety. Does it lead to any major side effects or any important side effects after, let's say, 5 or 10 years of vaccine administration? Now, in order to understand that, you will find that there is a approach which is used generally. It's called as post-marketing surveillance. And in post-marketing surveillance, the companies which are allowed to market that are expected to report any kind of unusual side effect that has occurred, which is actually then studied appropriately by what we call as for pharmacovigilance. If it detects that this is a new signal, new kind of side effect which is lighting up many a times and it's important, then this is inserted into product insert. People are also told that this vaccine may lead to development of XYZ side effect after so and so period. And that's how we pick up very long-term side effects. Why am I talking about it? So even if I was to do a classical trial, I have a finite duration of follow-up, which would mean that if there were any side effects that were to occur after 2 years, I will not be able to pick up for that post-marketing surveillance it becomes critical. And this is important because this is a pandemic of a rapidly spreading infection. It could eventually, if we don't do anything, everybody is vulnerable. So all of them will acquire, and I will know about those side effects. I will know that everybody is infected. But I want to prevent that from happening. Therefore, what I want to do is, if I want to give this vaccine, waiting all that long, you have to weigh the risk and benefits of the same. And it is felt that perhaps you would take small risks of the side effects emerging and then try to provide this to people so that they don't get this dreaded infection as such. Now, when this is happening, how do they monitor this in trial mode? No, in trial mode, you have something which is called as Data Safety Management Board and Institutional Ethics Committee. Now, the Institutional Ethics Committee is supposed to be informed simultaneously with this is located locally, and Data Safety Management Board is located at one site, which is where the experts are from different places or with different disciplines. That's a whole new kind of a thing that I will have to discuss if it is required. But these people are experts in different areas, and they are given some kind of assumptions which will say that if these side effects occur more frequently at this particular rate, you would like to stop the trial. No, that capacity to say you should not continue the trial rests with Data Safety Management Board. Institutional Ethics Committee tries to see not only the safety aspect, but the medical safety part of it, but they are also to see that the ethics of conduct of clinical trial are adhered to as strongly. So there are two committees which overlook it, which actually tells you that the monitoring is fairly strong in a clinical trial. Now, how do I stop? How the Data Safety Management Board tends to take a decision? If they find that there is a clear evidence, you could stop the trial in between. When can you stop? If there is an early evidence of efficacy, I thought that I may have to include, let's say, based on whatever my knowledge, I wanted to do this study for 2 years, and I would require about 1,000 odd patients for whatever was the outcome. And I find during interim analysis, which generally done midway, that I am already able to show that this drug or a vaccine is extremely effective. So if I wait for taking decision, either I might rob somebody of getting the benefits, or I might also see that those study participants who are still being followed could be exposed to unusual and unnecessary risk of side effects. So they could take the decision and they can stop. And these are generally criteria which are set at the time of development of the proposal for a vaccine trial, which are actually implemented by Data Safety Management Board. And also at the same time, if you find, when I do interim analysis and I find out that whatever my objective was, I'm finding that there is no effect between this vaccine and otherwise. No, if I find there is no effect and I'm seeing this during interim analysis, I can stop it. I can stop it for on the reasons of utility. So that is also an issue. And if I find in, let's say, from the ethics committee's reports as well as information that is submitted to Data Safety Management Board, that the trial has been implemented very poorly. There is very slow enrollment, or the number of people who are receiving the drug or vaccine, they tend to be lost to follow up in a very large proportion. The DSMB can still take a decision to stop the trial because it's not worthwhile conducting that. Now, since these things required lot of attention, as we said, in the lab, the scientists could develop rapidly the newer vaccine platforms based on the earlier experience for COVID-19. And then when it came to vaccine trials, no, there was this was something which was little different here, that most of the processes began in parallel. So you find that they tried to cut short on time, since these processes could be occurring parallelly without much of delay as such, and therefore they could essentially develop these vaccines very quickly. But when you develop these vaccines very quickly, the bigger fear is, have I recorded all adverse events? No, especially because one worry could be that I am using newer platforms. And there is another worry that you need to have, that if I don't talk about my findings well, then it could influence the feasibility of rolling out such a program. People could have both the spectrum. No, one could be those who have high vaccine eagerness because the rapid spread of this particular infection, or they could say, I don't want to take vaccine because I'm worried about the side effects itself. Now, in those circumstances, we need to understand about serious side effects first. Now, if I'm provided a vaccine, now what are the most important side effects that I could see? First is anaphylaxis. This is a very serious kind of an allergy, and when it occurs, no, it is more likely to be one event where you need experienced people who can handle such an emergency. But is that something which is very difficult to handle anywhere? Perhaps not. You need a certain setup to handle that. People can still try to see that anaphylactic shock may not result into deaths as such, and the frequency of such an event that could occur as anaphylactic shock is close to 1 in 100,000 or so. Does this happen in other vaccines? Other vaccines also could have, maybe having far more higher frequency. But every vaccine that we take, the worry is some people, because of either their genetic constitution, because of the allergies history that they tend to have, or the constituents that the vaccine product may have, they may develop anaphylaxis, but it's a rare event. And therefore, what government has done now is, any person, since the entire study is not yet done, so what they said was the participants will be under medical observation for almost half an hour after administration of the vaccine. There is another side effect which is called as transverse myelitis, right? Transverse myelitis can lead to, in crude words, something like paralysis. Encephalopathy is something which affects the ability of the brain to function properly. So I might have a confused, I might be confused, I might have all kinds of range of manifestations which are generally associated with brain. Now, these are generally because of the immune response, that this particular wrong kind of immune response that may come up with a vaccine. Now, transverse myelitis and encephalopathy are as rare as we talk of anaphylaxis. By and large, you tend to pick up very quickly, and these are considered as serious adverse event. You must have had heard few news bits where people claimed that there was development of transverse myelitis, and on investigation they found that this transverse myelitis development was not because of the vaccine but something else, no, some other disease process which the individual could have. So those are tracked, and then you respond to whether you want to add that as a serious side effect. One of the other worries that one has is our immune system after vaccination is likely to produce antibodies against our own bodily cells. No, so your functioning gets affected and it could produce something like an autoimmune disease. Is that very common? It is not very common, though we tend to hear about it. There, when we hear about the news, we do not know how many people the vaccine was safe. And generally, this information tends to be disseminated either to WHO or the regulator about the frequencies of occurrence of such adverse events. Generally, if you look at these serious side effects that tend to occur, you are more likely to have them as rare. But when we say rare, no, you must also understand that in a phase 3 trial, you might have, let's assume, 40,000 people who are a part of this trial. Now, if there is an event which is likely to occur in 1 lakh persons only once, now it is possible that you may miss it, but therefore a keen watch is taken and a cautious approach is also adopted during immunization in such a circumstance as such. Most of these toxicities that were considered previously, they are serious kind of toxicities. They generally tend to occur in the first 2 months of follow-up, and one must remember that majority of the vaccines that are getting emergency use authorization, they already have average follow-up period, which is around 3.5 to 4 months time for this phase 3 studies. And therefore, you're more likely not to see an undescribed or unknown kind of frequency of these toxicities. They are more likely to be continued as such. And as I said earlier, even if you were to have a normal kind of follow-up study, for certain side effects which could occur on a long-term basis, you could still have missed them and pick them up in phase 4 trials as such. But at the same time, we must be aware of another thing, and that is that there could be temporary, local or systemic side effects. Now, I am taking example of AstraZeneca directly. You find that what is reported, 60% of the participants are likely to have some tenderness at injection site. Tenderness is just pain. There will be some swelling. It may last for a short period of time. If you have feel more, you could take crocin or paracetamol, whichever you want to take, and that may not cause any problem. There could be headache and tiredness almost in half of the people who receive the vaccine. People could have fatigue, or there could be pain in the muscles or muscle aches that we will feel in close to people, more than 40% of the people. Some people could have fever and chills. No, that could be 1/3 of those who receive vaccine. Some may develop joint pains and nausea. But one must remember these are transient. They may last for a few days and then just go off. You could take any symptomatic treatment and they are not likely to cause the same problem at this juncture. If you compare the same with Bharat Biotech vaccine, what has been reported for Covaxin, in phase 2 trial, they reported 7% of the participants had these kinds of side effects, which is far lower compared to what has been reported in AstraZeneca. But we will get more information as the phase 3 trial comes to conclusion on the frequencies as such. It is important that for all of us, we need to remember, since these local or systemic side effects could occur right after taking first dose, no, the second dose has to be taken 28 days later. No, occurrence of these side effects after the first dose should not lead to we saying no to taking second dose, where that would be extremely detrimental. This is because essentially, no, we have to take 2 dosages, and we should not use our own experience to decide. The doctors can decide whether you need to take that decision, that dose subsequently. We will see some of the conditions. Generally, these side effects, one worry would be, if I take the second dose, then would there be more side effects or longer side effects that might occur after taking the second dose? No, generally they tend to be lesser than what we have seen in the first dose. So second dose will not be associated with so negative findings. Now, given the urgency to develop vaccine and scale up the administration, WHO said even if the vaccine can protect 50% of the people to whom it has been administered, which means if 100 people are given vaccine, as long as more than 50 are protected by against severe disease, development of severe disease, that should be acceptable. The regulators also, they played their own role. They waived off certain steps to accord a fast track approval for vaccines, looking at the seriousness of this illness and the way COVID was spreading. The reported high efficacy of most of the vaccine is perhaps a reflection of their strategy. They use spike protein, and spike protein appears to be the best immunogen against this COVID-19 as of now. Now, almost all of these vaccines are based on delivering either spike protein directly or the genes that encode for production of spike protein, whether it is through DNA, whether it is through messenger RNA, or whether it is through small pieces of spike proteins which can generate this immune response, which is also called as subunit vaccines, which currently we don't have, but we are likely to have one subsequently. Now, if you look at the early December part, when most of the manufacturers came out with the results of vaccine trial, these are all interim trial results. The trials are yet to be completed. You find that Pfizer and Moderna came out with study results which showed that almost 95% of the people who received this vaccine will not develop severe disease. AstraZeneca had some issues. There were two different dosages that were tried in AstraZeneca trial, and therefore you find that in one of the settings where a smaller dose was given and then a second dose was a large dose, they found that the efficacy was 90%, whereas it was about 60% if we gave two large dosages or two standard dosages that were administered of AstraZeneca vaccine. Sputnik vaccine also claimed that they have used adenovirus with spike protein genes, the way similar to AstraZeneca vaccine. There also they found that the efficacy rate was close to 95%. For Bharat Biotech, which is using inactivated vaccine, we do not know what is its protective efficacy, but it is intuitively spoken that since it contains spike protein as well as other proteins also, it is more or less likely to be similar to what has been seen before, and therefore perhaps we don't know exactly, but that is the reason why it has also been approved in India. Now, if you look at the first data that emerged from vaccine trials, in Pfizer vaccine, when they provided the first dose, within 12 to 13 days time, majority of the people developed adequate protection. The first question that comes up is, why do we need the second dose then? If I am developing protection within first 12 to 13 days of the first dose. Should we take one dose alone? Definitely not. Not only for Pfizer vaccine, but for others, we need to take dosages, two dosages at defined interval, because we still do not have data on its durability of protection over a long period of time. And what does these two dosages mean? When you give first dose, you are actually sensitizing the immune system for the first time. And then when I give second dose, I am reminding that you have to ensure that your own body produces adequate antibodies against COVID-19, and how it has to be done will have to be reminded by the second dose, so that the body efficiently produces antibodies whenever there is an exposure to this virus. So two dosages are necessary. Who are going to be falling for in our priority groups in India? We are going to give this vaccine free of cost to 30 crore people. And who are the people? One is healthcare workers, second is frontline workers, and those who are 50 years over 50 years with comorbidities are also included in the same group. It is assumed that you have close to about 3 crore people between healthcare workers and frontline workers, and the remaining 27 crore is an estimate of those who are older and require the vaccine because they have comorbidity. Now, the currently the government is not preparing the list of healthcare workers and frontline workers because it is readily available in the state records, various different kinds of records that they have, which they can use. Why are we picking up healthcare workers? The reason is very simple. You find that the risk of they acquiring COVID-19 is far higher, despite the fact that they are using PPE for one simple reason. They are persistently exposed to this particular infection, and therefore the risk enhances, not because of the exposure alone. No, the exposure is likely to become unprotected in certain instances. They will have to be, they will be repeatedly exposed to this infection. So you include them into your first phase. The older individuals, why are they included? Because you want to reduce the number of deaths that could occur in the community if somebody acquires it. And we know for sure that those who are older, those who have chronic morbidity like diabetes, hypertension, kidney disease, or some kind of cancer, they will perhaps have to be protected first, because they shouldn't die. Otherwise, majority of the other population is likely to have asymptomatic infection, though the threat of the post-COVID syndrome continues to be there even among them. But at least during prioritization, we should look for reducing the number of people who could be dying. How if I am, let's say, over 50 years of age, how will I register myself? The COVID app will be launched by the government on their website. In a health system, because not everybody would have access to COVID app. In the health system in rural areas or wherever there is no access to internet, those people can register their names in the health system. We have an extensive health system across in India, so that is easily possible. What you need to do is you carry any photo ID card to register, because then you would be given a unique ID, identification number. And since it is provided, it would become easier to say, because our names by and large are also likely to be similar in India because of the large population size. If that is likely to happen, this number will be able to distinguish whether the person who has come to take vaccine is the same person who had taken the vaccine earlier. Now, there are people now who worry about security. Now, since this is going to go into app, what should I be doing if I have to protect it? There could be people who may misuse it. Now, that's also a valid concern. But then you could use your voter election ID, which has a photograph, where you don't have to give information which could be potentially used by a wrong kind of a person to, let's say, rob you from your bank account of money that you tend to have. Now, once you register in COVID app, what will happen is the appointment will be given, and you would be informed through SMS. And this is particularly being done because we want to avoid rush at the vaccine site. We want to maintain safe distance so that you don't acquire infection merely because you came to that particular site and got exposed. The total number per site that is being limited to 25 only because they want to ensure that you don't acquire it while going there for taking vaccine. All the persons will have to wait for 30 minutes for under medical observation after administration of this vaccine. Now, there are certain issues that come to our mind. If I am admitted in the hospital at present, right, how do I get the vaccine? No, you should not. You should consult with your doctor. If you are sick, seriously sick, then you should not be taking this vaccine immediately, because your immune system may be suppressed to a larger extent. Now, if I give vaccine to you, in those cases, what might happen is my immune system will not generate the take or success of this vaccination will be affected to a larger extent. So by and large, one suggestion that if your immune system has been suppressed due to one or the other reason while you are being hospitalized, then you could wait for 4 to 12 weeks time after illness, and then you take the vaccine, because then your immune system has also recuperated and is becoming normal by then. Will people receive different vaccines for the two dosages that they take, which essentially would mean that if I receive AstraZeneca vaccine, would it be that next time when I go for second dose, I might receive, let's say, Bharat Biotech's vaccine? This will not happen in India. in India, we are going to provide the vaccine from the same dosages that he has received for the first time. When will others get the vaccine? Because one question that comes to one's mind is 30 crores is fine, but I would like to know, I don't fall in that priority group. When will I get the vaccine? You must remember that first priority group might be completed by September 2021 as an outside limit, and then the process will be started to include based on the decision, how will we have those processes extended for other population which is remaining to be vaccinated, and whether we can provide it free. Hopefully, the prices or the cost will come down as the market competition tends to increase, because there are multiple manufacturers who may get approvals prior to that, and the availability of dosages. Now, one of the things that tends to happen is some people will feel, I had COVID-19 earlier. Should I be taking vaccine now? No, you need to take the vaccine. We do not know how long the protection tends to exist if you are infected by COVID-19 earlier. No, the most recent report suggests that it could last for 8 months. It is expected that vaccine protection is likely to be lasting for a longer period than 8 months. The vaccine that you are provided again would be akin to taking one more dose to remind my immune system to produce produce antibodies against it. Rarely, theoretically, there could be a cause of concern that rarely somebody may develop severe disease because the person had a stronger presence of antibodies. But so far, there is no evidence at this juncture. There is no reason to worry on that account. The caution or monitoring will be done through the government. Please take 2 dosages of vaccine is something which we need to remember, even if you had COVID before. Now, there any groups where you need to have a caution when you administer COVID vaccine? When it comes to pregnant women and children, the vaccine trial did not include these two populations. So the decision that has been taken here is we would not like to provide vaccine currently to these individuals. And if somebody has history of severe allergies, then that has to be told to the doctor, and the decision will be taken as to what should be done. Now people ask, if I have asthma, should I be worried about it? No, please remember that you may not worry about asthma being difficult to be vaccinated. No, perhaps you will be required to stay there for a longer period of time after vaccination. But we don't expect that the common allergic profile is likely to influence the decision to take the vaccine. What if somebody is immunocompromised? There are no problems with mRNA vaccine, subunit vaccine, the spike protein vaccine. One could have had concerns about live attenuated vaccine, but this is not there in our portfolio. We have inactivated vaccine, so there is nothing much to worry. In general, the immune response may be lesser if I am immunocompromised. Now, what do we mean by immunocompromised? Somebody who is having HIV infection. But if I'm receiving antiretroviral therapy well, and I'm taking it regularly, my all disease parameters, the surrogates of my disease status, are in a good shape. I should not worry about this particular issue. Will these vaccines require a booster? Booster means, let's say there is a fear that, like in influenza, every year perhaps you will be required to take this vaccine. Perhaps it is unlikely to happen that way. No, though hard data currently doesn't exist, but there are indications that T cell sensitization tends to occur of spike proteins, and it will continue to protect us for a longer period. At least that period is going to be more than 1 year. And some data is coming up on T cell sensitization among the vaccines that have been approved, including some data that tends to come from AstraZeneca as well as Bharat Biotech. So that worry we shouldn't keep at the back of mind. And even if it comes to that, then we may have to take it over whatever period that is required. But currently what is required is protecting oneself. Are these adverse events going to be monitored? Yes, they will be monitored. There is a very strong adverse event, sorry, adverse event nahi hai wo, adverse event following immunization system, which is called as AEFI, which is in place for childhood immunization. The same system will continue to track these adverse events that tend to occur, and there is a review of any adverse event that tends to occur at the block level, and then the information is passed off appropriately, and we have a good pharmacovigilance system which is likely to get these reports, which will be investigated appropriately. If I want to defer vaccine taking, no, can I do it? No, there are people who tend to worry that if I say that I would like to wait for 3 months time, know how many people have received the vaccine, and if that is safe, then I will go ahead. But one needs to remember two facets. One, taking vaccine is purely voluntary. It will there be a vaccine which I can buy from the market and take it? Currently, we don't see that happening very quickly, because one of the worries is if you go into private market and then buy it, there could be people who may exploit the opportunities by creating fake vaccines and selling them. So that part is also avoidable. So initially, at least, we don't see that the vaccines will be marketed in next 3-4 months time. It is not yet clear that if somebody says I will take the vaccine after 3 months, no, but despite the fact that I have registered and have been allotted a date, we don't know how government will be taking position on that. I think I will stop here and open it up for any discussion. Hello.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Raman. It was indeed a very nice and exhaustive presentation, and most of the queries and questions have been addressed. But there are a few questions in the chat box. Dr. Lalit,
Yes, sir.
can you
Yes, sir.
please, can
I'm
you
taking them up.
yes, please take them up.
Yes, sir. So thank you very much, Professor Dr. Raman, for your very comprehensive and a very clear talk on the topic, which is very hot these days. And most of the participants have appreciated your talk. There are some questions in the box. Uh, One is asking what is the percentage of protection offered. I think you have answered that very well. Do we test the antibody titer before giving vaccine? Somebody wants to ask this.
No. We don't test antibody titer for two reasons. Now, as I said, even if I have natural infection and antibodies have been developed, we do not know how long the protection will last. It is expected that the protection that is offered by vaccines is definitely going to last longer than natural infection, where our immune system responds variably. No, and the second issue is if you add this particular layer, no, then in that case, operationalizing the whole strategy, no, first do antibody level and then do administration of vaccine, it will add to delays. No, even if you were to use this in as a cautionary note to see go for subgroup analysis among them, but there will be efforts to ensure that those who have antibodies, which will be known subsequently in research mode, what kind of reaction do they have in terms of immune response. So as of now, no, we don't need to think of antibody detection before taking the vaccine. And this is
So
globally
during the
followed.
trials,
Please remember that this is done globally, not only in India.
Hello.
With this in the yes, sir.
Hello.
Who is on the call?
Dinesh, Dinesh, you have blocked the video also.
No. In fact, I had earlier blocked the video. Now you can open it. I had blocked the videos and audios of all the people, but now I have enabled everyone.
No, but I'm getting it still. The hosts are disabled. You karke aaya.
Let me see. because I have learned to block all these things, and let me try if I can. Uh, just a moment.
So in the meantime, I would like to ask Dr. Raman.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I'll do it. I'll do it. No issue. Ask to start the video. Now you can start the video, please.
Okay, started.
Yes, yes.
Dr.
मेरा अभी भी start नहीं हुआ
Raman,
दिनेश.
Dr. Raman,
Yeah.
first question I would like to ask you: are you ready to take the vaccine?
See, do we have choice is another thing. Do we not do we not want to go out a little bit at least? No, one of the things that we have to remember is, you have very little options. Either you want to stay imprisoned in your own world, don't interact with one another, or take a small risk. And the risk gets magnified because of the news stories that tend to come in media. But as I kept on saying, these stories, like somebody says that Pfizer vaccine has resulted in anaphylactic shock somewhere. 3 or 4 instances of anaphylactic shock have been reported with Pfizer. But do they tell you that currently the number of people who have received Pfizer vaccine also, that is huge. No, it runs into almost close to 80 lakh people or so far in the Western world also. Now, which essentially means when we hear news, we don't look at the denominator. If it is unsafe, why do we think that the government would not be worried in going for scaling up of this vaccine response? So essentially, I see no issue. Now, there are some people who ask, which vaccine would you like to take? I don't think we have that luxury. No, because the manufacturing of vaccine dosages is so limited as of now. One may have to just go by what is available in terms of numbers rather than choosing. And it's very difficult to take a call given the protective efficacy almost likely to be similar.
The other question is, you said about the transverse myelitis and encephalopathy, which can be the side effect. But are they reversible or irreversible?
So far, what we have seen is reversible. So far,
Because
and
the other
these have also been observed with other vaccines also. One way I would say is, if I was not worried about other vaccines, we should question ourselves: do I need to get worried about this vaccine now? No,
Okay.
one major difference which one has to understand is if earlier, let's say 10, 20 years back, if a new vaccine was developed, we would have never known. No, government could have just said, please take this vaccine. It's just the access to information which is causing us worry. And when we read that, we tend to get worried a lot and worry about those side effects. But most of the side effects that you have heard so far, they also occurred with different vaccines, but as rarely, and it is unlikely, or it would be unfair to say that they may be occurring more frequently with this particular uh, COVID-19 vaccines.
Just now, about half an hour ago, I got a call from my relative in USA. She took the first dose of vaccine on Tuesday, and they were never asked to wait for half an hour. Just say, just take it and go away. That's what she did. She took it and went off.
Yeah, but in India, as I said, we have the largest immunization program in the world. It penetrates right up to village level. Now, in order to ensure that it doesn't cause harm, the decision has been taken that 25 people at one site, safe distancing to be followed, and half an hour of observance. We cannot comment on what they are doing in USA in terms of procedural issues.
Other thing is
I
that
think
by
in
the time
UK, in UK also they have to wait for half an hour.
Yeah.
see, by the time you give 30 crore people vaccination, the COVID itself might disappear.
No, that is a wishful thinking, sir.
Doctor,
For which we don't have evidence. But what is a worry is, no, if I go for wishful thinking and then eventually, I acquire an infection, that would be a big mistake over 2 jabs that I have to take. No,
Dr.
it's
Ram,
the way we think. No?
Dr. Raman, what will be what the government, how the government will distribute Bharat Biotech and Serum Institute vaccine? How will they prioritize? I mean, which will get this vaccine, which one will get other vaccine?
I don't think they will go by that kind of logic.
Yes, sir.
What they are going to do is whoever is able to distribute the vaccine first, they will try to deliver it to these groups as early as possible. Apparently, it seems that AstraZeneca vaccine is, they have already got sufficient dosages available. Though Covaxin also claims they have some, but Covaxin में एक issue ये रहता है कि since it is an inactivated vaccine, you need to culture virus. So you need to have BSL-3, BSL-4 facility for production of this vaccine. So it limits your ability to provide large number of dosages. So it is possible that initially, whoever is supplier, the areas would be demarcated and they would send that vaccine wherever it is. Because we don't have that luxury of making decisions because there is complete vaccine shortage in terms of dosages globally.
See, because in Bombay, the dean of the KM hospital and the GS Medical College, some other physicians, senior people, they refused to take this. We're not going to take it.
No, I didn't. What should take it?
They don't want to take. They don't want to take the vaccine. They say we're not going to take the vaccine. We'll wait.
No, sir. As I said, the decision one has to weigh individually the risk and benefits. That's number one. Number two, would there be mandatory vaccination? Not mandatory vaccination. So it's up to people. No, but at the same time, while weighing these decisions, we need to think about them through risk-benefit analysis, whether it would be a prudent step. But that decision is individual. I cannot say that it would be forced.
Can I ask something?
Somehow you see the Indian population of more than 140 crores.
Sure. She's Dr. Snehata Mathur from United Kingdom, from London speaking. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Dr. Raman, that was the most interesting and very, very informative lecture you gave. Thank you so much. All I wanted to ask, my daughter had a very, very bad reaction with the flu vaccine about a year ago, or could be a few years ago. And she was ill for a whole 1 month. And I don't really know whether this vaccine is safe for her now or not. What do you think?
No, if you actually see, UK government has already issued a cautionary note that those who have history of severe allergic reactions, including anaphylactic or any other type of reaction, they would decide based on case-to-case basis. No, because you need to look at the data, the disease that the person had, and take an appropriate call. If those reactions can be very easily treated, then in those cases, they may ask for more time for medical observation after providing the vaccine, and they may take a call. But it cannot be a generic kind of a decision. It has to be.
No, thank you. No, I haven't seen that information. In fact, they're pushing her. She's a GP here in England, and they're pushing her to take the vaccination. And she keeps on asking me, and I'm not sure whether she should or she should not, because they haven't really considered her bad reaction to flu vaccine. So I thought I'll ask your opinion as you're an expert, and then I can just explain to her.
What you should do is you should access MHRA advice. It is on Public Health England site. You will see a dossier which describes how and what has to be done.
Okay, thank you.
So in such a case, if you take one dose of hydrocortisone and 1 dose of antihistamine, you can take the vaccine. So that can be probably prevented anaphylaxis or any other reaction.
Sir, when we say that I would take 1 dose of steroid and 1 dose of this, do we think that it is able to suppress my immune system to ensure that allergic
immune system, just to prevent that reaction, immediate reaction, whatever it is?
No, that is what I'm saying. No, does this tell you that you will be protected from developing immune response, allergic immune response, by providing that small
Probably
dose.
nothing
I
wrong in
don't
the
think it
medical
should be
world.
done. And at the same time, if we do it, we do not know as of now what would be its impact. No, if you had heard, no, there was a news that in Russia they said you should not consume alcohol for 2 months' time.
Oh,
Just because it affects immune system. But I think
That
most
would
of
suit
these,
many Britishers.
yeah, most of these statements are coming out of lack of data as of now. We will know more about it, but I would not advise that you should take these medicines before, because in any case, paracetamol is going to work the best, even with that. Or if it
somehow
No.
is
I have a
serious issue,
feeling in
serious
Indian
issue to
population
other.
of such a big crore, 140 crores. Still, the incidence is very less as compared to the rest of the world. So that itself shows that we Indians have got a natural immunity or herd immunity.
सर ऐसे नहीं है वो हर्ड इम्यूनिटी का हिसाब नहीं है. वो कैसा है कि हम लोगों ने क्या किया, स्टैगर्ड लॉकडाउन खोलते गए. स्टैगर्ड लॉकडाउन जब खोलते हैं तो वल्नरेबल पॉपुलेशन जो होती है वो कितनी एक्सपोज हुई और नेक्स्ट बैचेस में कौन सी पॉपुलेशन आएगी उसके ऊपर वो ठहरेगा ना. So the populations tend to differ, and therefore you see those who have been going out, some of them were largely exposed. But there are other two factors. One is, how how bad is the population density wherever they are going or wherever they are staying, and how much is the mobility, because both operate. No, if you are staying in a closed space where an infected person would come, the risk would be higher. But you look at rural areas. In rural areas, ventilation is good, population density is lesser than urban areas. So you are not going to see a similar effect all across, though the infection will continue to spread in the community. So it's very difficult to say whether Indians have good immunity and therefore we are protected. We don't have any such data.
So in for Indian population, we have got maximum number of Indian people over here. For Indian population, what is your take? Which vaccine is one should take or not take? Which
Sir, I say, no, it's very difficult to decide that way. One has also got to know that most of the results that we are getting are from interim analysis. To take a call and say this one is like this or this vaccine is better, then perhaps you will always allege that Ganga Khedkar was paid by some pharma
no,
company.
I'm not. I'm not. I, listen. You are very
Because
elaborate in your
नहीं सर, लेकिन
अरे
डेटा
वाह।
डेटा अगर क्लियर रहता था तो बोल सकते थे. अब बगैर क्लियर डेटा का अगर मैं बोलूं ये वैक्सीन अच्छी है, तो you should suspect my intentions of telling
no.
that.
No, nobody can think or nobody can have a suspicion a person like you. Listen, you are an undisputed. That is why we know it will last more than 40 years. That is altogether different thing. So
Sir, there are some more questions. There are a few more questions.
please.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Rajesh Kumar is wanting to know what would be the status of vaccination in patients who are on steroids and biologics?
No, that falls in the same group. I think those decisions, though they are not part of national guidelines, no, what we need to do is discuss that with the doctor. How strong is the immune suppression, and then take a call. For with respect to monoclonals, no, the biologicals that he refers to,
Right.
you are not providing a live vaccine. So we don't see any kind of interference because of monoclonal antibody provision. So those
जीजो एक
persons can
बिस्किट भी
take.
देना पड़ेगा।
Huh? क्या?
Oh. You have to mute your. I'll mute her. I'll mute her.
So essentially what happens is, for people on monoclonal antibody, there is not much of worry, biologicals as such, because none of them are live vaccines. But for others, I think the call has to be taken in consultation with the doctor. How profound is the immune suppression?
Is there a critical doses of steroids at which the patient should avoid, the person should avoid taking vaccine?
No, sir. No.
No.
There is no algorithm for deciding what is immune suppression.
Is there an effect of swine flu vaccination who has been done in the past? Does it offer any protection or interference in the current status of COVID-19 vaccination?
Which vaccine did you say, sir?
Swine flu vaccination. Those who have been vaccinated
No,
for
no,
swine
no.
flu.
No. There is no relationship that way. There was a small study which was conducted in Brazil where they tried to show some kind of protection. But one must remember both are different viruses. There is no relationship between these two viruses. One needs to take both, if at all.
Probably we have all the more forgotten to take the swine flu now, which we were.
Yes. Every year we used to take. This year we have not. Yes.
मैं वही बोला ना सर, वो डर का माहौल बढ़ गया है.
True.
It has not only affected adult vaccination of even swine flu vaccination.
But after your lecture, this vaccine eagerness is probably has slowed down a little bit in this sense.
क्यों सर?
Transverse myelitis और वो जो है, as Dr. Niranjan Nagpur said, that transverse myelitis, he also noticed the side effect of that.
नहीं, लेकिन ट्रांसवर्स माइलाइटिस तो हर वैक्सीन के साथ में कहीं जुड़ा हुआ है. कहीं 5 लाख में एक है, कहीं 10 लाख में एक है. अब मैं ही इतना भाग्यवान आदमी होगा कि मुझे ट्रांसवर्स माइलाइटिस ही लगेगा बोला तो मुश्किल है ना फिर.
I think that's why I would prefer to have a COVID rather than transverse myelitis, irreversible.
So that is this you are saying because you did not have COVID.
Dr. Nagpur, unfortunately, we lost one of our batchmate with this dreadful disease. There are another important he was a famous surgeon here in Jaipur. The another person is a famous psychiatrist. He's in the hospital for last more than 2 months and with almost more than 70% of his lungs damaged. So this is a very dreadful disease. I'll never say that you should opt for that. You should opt for vaccine.
No, Dinesh, why I'm saying is that better to die rather than lifelong being a irreversible transverse myelitis. Depends on somebody else.
Nothing in our.
As I said, all of them were reversible.
No, then it is fine.
Nothing in our hands.
Then it is
And
fine.
they were, see, so far there is no data that it was because of vaccine. The attribution, when it was examined, there is no attribution to vaccine so far.
Yes, there are natural causes.
See, even my uncle, who is an 86-year-old man, with all the comorbidities, heart and diabetes and whatnot, neurological problems, have not stepped out of the house for 5 years. He got it.
Lalit,
He was admitted in the hospital. I thought he won't come back. Within 5 days, he's absolutely perfect. He's back to normal.
Sir, मैं एक बोल रहा हूँ. Now, if you believe on few persons whom you know what was their outcome after infection, one must also see the way USA and UK are reeling under the onslaught. No, where the numbers tend to be large, and there is no reason to believe that these are cooked up stories, no, of numbers and what happens and things like that. I think it is important not to go by personal experiences, but by what have been the studies that are reporting.
But sir, I am 71-year-old. I had COVID-19. I recovered in 7 days, and I am a very happy man because I had just had it. Now I am not fearing it. I am a free man almost like that.
Lucky man. He's a man of he's doctor of my batch, Dr. Sharma, and he's of an army background, and he is a tough man.
But I am happy that I had it. Now I am free of it, yaar. I mean, I'm not scared now. I already had it, so fine.
Most of the people, those who have had it and came out, they are very free. Absolutely, that is altogether a different thing. But let us think of those people.
But if those people take a vaccine, they get a double protection.
नहीं सर, इसमें
those
इसमें एक
people who
ही
support
बोलूंगा
the
मैं ज्यादा तो कोई बोलूंगा नहीं, क्योंकि ये सब पर्सनल डिसीजंस है। तकदीर पे भरोसा रखना है क्या वैक्सीन पे, ये हमने सोचना है।
It's a very tough question.
कभी कभी मुझे ऐसा लगता है एटलीस्ट आप अपना नसीब के ऊपर जो जाता है वट एवर इट इज।
All right. Thank you very much. It was an excellent indeed, very nice presentation. And if there are no other questions and queries, I would like to give a big thank to Dr. Raman Gangakhedkar and to be for this evening. And I end the meeting, close the meeting.
Thank you. Nice to
Wonderful,
wonderful.
Dr. Raman and Dinesh.
Bye Dinesh, Lalit, bye.
Bye, sir. Bye. Bye, sir.
Bye.